Psychotherapist Dr. Robi Ludwig joins us now to break down these headlines. Dr. Robi, always good to see you. Thanks for being here. So let's jump right in to talk about that cannabis use one. So daily cannabis use now overtaking alcohol. So specifically, we should say this is about what's called high frequency use by Americans, not total consumption. But cannabis is used to deal with mental health challenges, right? But there are also a lot of mental health concerns on the other hand. Walk us through this.
Yeah, so they have seen a rise in cannabis use since the 90s, and they think in part this is because it's been legalized and considered a less dangerous drug. But this is really a misconception. So they've done studies and found that with regular cannabis use amongst 25-year-olds and under could increase the risk of having psychotic disorders, even schizophrenia, which is really quite striking and concerning. For those who are 65 and over, a Canadian study found that there was poisoning as a result of cannabis use. It can be addictive, and for those who use it on a regular basis, can be at risk for having a stroke or heart attack.
Let's turn to an 18-year study out of Finland. So this is super interesting. This is about how having a classmate who is experiencing mental illness, that can increase a teen's chance of being diagnosed themselves later in life. I mean, talk to us about this one. It makes it sound, I used the words a minute ago, as if it's like something that's contagious or something that is influenced in some ways. What do you make of this study? I know there's still some questions and experts sort of have some sort of asterisks around it, but what are some takeaways from this to help people be more healthy?
Well, this was a huge study in Finland, and it looked at over 700,000 ninth graders. And they found that with more kids in the class who suffered with a mental illness, that it could increase the rate of having a diagnosis oneself. And the people who did this study said, listen, this is not causal, but just something to look at. And specifically the disorders that were raised were mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and eating disorders. And there is something called a social contagion, especially amongst teens and peers. So it's just to really look at, do peers really influence us in multiple ways? Is it just, that these disorders are normalized so kids feel more comfortable talking about it? But it does provide kind of this idea of, group treatment for peers to kind of influence each other in a positive way in terms of maybe some type of group treatment. And it is something of note because human beings do affect one another, and it's just good to be aware of to see if there's any interventions that should be made.
Absolutely. Okay, finally, we all, I think we like to eat what we like to eat. Sometimes we don't experiment very much. Maybe you kind of eat the same thing every day, every breakfast or something like that. But this is actually, there's a term, and of course it's getting popular online, so we want to ask about it. For people with ADD or ADHD, it can become something called hyperfixation meals. How can we spot the difference here? Is this something bad? What does this mean?
Well, it's something to be aware of, and it can be concerning. So with ADHD, this hyperfixation on certain foods, and very often it's comfort foods, is to kind of feel stimulated, get that dopamine high. And what this can look like is, fixating on comfort foods and not eating anything else. So there's an increased risk of some type of malnutrition. It could look like eating in the middle of the night because you have to eat that one thing that you're fixated on. It can interfere with lifestyle if someone refuses to go out with friends, let's say, or attend family events because they need their food in one particular way and to eat it a certain way. And there is this relationship between ADHD and hyperfixation, and they think it's because it's just easier not to make a choice, right? You don't have to think about what you're going to eat, and you just eat the same thing all the time. So more studies need to be done, but they look at therapy as a possible cure.
Dr. Robi Ludwig, always great to have you with us. Really cool, important information today. Thank you.